A narrow peninsula, jutting into cold waters, holds the secret to why empires rise and fall. No city in human history has ever stood at a more consequential crossroads than this one. In 658 BCE, Greek colonists from Megara beached their ships on a windswept cape. Before building, they consulted the Oracle of Delphi to learn where to settle. The oracle's riddle pointed here, opposite Chalcedon, whose founders had ignored this superior spot. Chalcedon settlers chose the eastern bank, despite reaching the western shore first. The new settlement was named Byzantium, honoring their legendary founder, Byzas. Three great waters converged here: the Bosphorus, the Sea of Marmara, and the Golden Horn. The Golden Horn curved inward, sheltering hundreds of vessels safe from the open sea. Any ship between the Black Sea and Aegean routes had to pass Byzantium's walls. This geographic choke point let Byzantium tax, inspect, or deny passage to any fleet. Grain from the steppes, timber, silver, and salted fish flowed through this gate. Water defended the peninsula on three sides. Only the western approach needed fortification. Megarian engineers built stone walls along that approach, trusting geography for the rest. Within a generation, the camp grew into a polis, with markets, temples, and councils. Persia's Darius I captured the wealthy city around 513 BCE during his Scythian campaign. Persian occupation lasted only years before Greeks reclaimed it, a pattern repeated for centuries. Conquerors came, held it briefly, then found themselves expelled by the city's geographic logic. The city fought alongside Athens, then fell under Spartan influence, too valuable to stay neutral. Philip II of Macedon besieged Byzantium in 340 BCE, met with celebrated civic defiance. A sudden crescent moon reportedly revealed Philip's night assault, letting defenders repel it. That crescent moon became a civic symbol, appearing on Byzantium's coins for centuries. Philip withdrew, and Byzantium remained independent, a rare outcome against Alexander the Great's father. Alexander never targeted the city, likely valuing alliance over a costly siege. By the Hellenistic period, the city minted its own currency and maintained a navy. Roman power absorbed Byzantium in the 1st century BCE, though it kept its Greek character. Septimius Severus punished Byzantium in 196 CE for backing his rival Pescennius Niger. Severus tore down the city's walls and stripped it to a subordinate village. Yet Severus eventually rebuilt the city, adding a hippodrome and a wider grid. This cycle of destruction and rebuilding showed the city was too strategically vital to abandon. By the early 4th century CE, civil wars and barbarian incursions fractured the Roman Empire. Constantine, a general's son, fought his way to power through a decade of campaigning. At Milvian Bridge, in October 312, Constantine defeated Maxentius to rule the Western world. Ancient sources say Constantine saw a Christian vision and had it painted on shields. Whether faith or politics, Constantine's embrace of Christianity permanently changed Roman society. Constantine's Edict of Milan in 313 CE granted Christians toleration after 2 centuries of persecution. Ruling from Rome felt inadequate, since it sat far from threatened frontiers. the Danube. Persia and the wealthy East demanded a capital nearer their centre. Constantine considered Thessalonica and Troy, before surveyors brought him to Old Byzantium. Standing on the peninsula, Constantine marked his new walls by driving a spear into the earth. The scale astonished his advisers. The new city would dwarf Old Byzantium and rival Rome. Construction began on a scale unmatched since the Ptolemies' programs in Alexandria. Marble, statues from Athens and Delphi, and whole craftsman workshops all relocated to the new site. Constantine named the city Nova Roma, but his own name soon overtook the title. On May 11th, 330 CE, Constantine dedicated his capital in a Roman Christian ceremony. The porphyry column of Constantine rose at the Forum, topped with a gilded sun god statue. The hippodrome was expanded to seat 100,000 among looted bronze monuments. The serpent column, honouring Greek victory over Persia, had stood at Delphi for centuries. Constantine's city attracted settlers with free grain, mirroring Rome's ancient dole system. Within 2 decades, the population swelled to rival Alexandria's density in the east. Constantine died in 337 CE, leaving 3 sons who nearly destroyed his unified empire. Brothers executed brothers in dynastic violence. Yet the city's institutions endured regardless. Constantinople survived dynastic infighting and became, under Theodosius I, a Christian capital. Theodosius's Edict of Thessalonica in 380 CE made Nicene Christianity the empire's sole religion. When Theodosius died in 395 CE, the split empire's eastern half kept Constantinople forever. The Eastern Empire, later called Byzantium, entered a long era of external pressure. Justinian I was born around 482 CE in a small Illyrian village. His uncle Justin rose on talent alone, seizing the throne in 518 CE. Justinian arrived in a magnificent but chaotic city, tangled in centuries of Roman decrees. He studied law, theology, and strategy intensely, alarming aristocrats expecting a mere puppet. His 525 CE marriage to Theodora, a former actress, shocked Constantinople's aristocracy deeply. Theodora survived poverty and contempt through sheer will, qualities the empire later needed. Justinian ascended to sole rule in 527 CE and commissioned an ambitious legal codification. Jurist Tribonian led 16 scholars who compressed centuries of statutes into one code. The resulting Corpus Juris Civilis, finished in 529 CE, shaped European law for centuries. In January 532 CE, disaster struck in the empire's most violent urban uprising. The Nika revolt began as rival blue and green factions united against Justinian. Within 5 days, rioters burned the Hagia Sophia and proclaimed a rival emperor. Justinian prepared ships to flee as his court moved valuables, and Theodora intervened. Recorded by Procopius. She vowed to die in purple rather than flee. Her words halted the evacuation, and Justinian sent Belisarius with Gothic mercenaries to strike. Belisarius sealed the hippodrome's exits and slaughtered 30,000 rioters in one afternoon. Justinian surveyed the ruins and quickly commissioned a structure on an unattempted scale. Anthemius and Isidore proposed a 31-metre dome, unprecedented atop a square base. 10,000 labourers spent 5 years quarrying marble and hauling columns from afar. Curved pendentives transferred the dome's weight into 4 massive piers, not the walls. Entering the finished Hagia Sophia in 537 CE, Justinian cried out he'd surpassed Solomon. 40 windows made the dome seem to float on an unprecedented ring of light. While the dome rose, Belisarius led a reconquest into territories lost for generations. Belisarius's mere 15,000 men stunningly defeated the Vandal kingdom in 533 CE. He then began a grinding 20-year Gothic war that devastated Italy regardless. Constantinople grew rich as Justinian monopolized every silk route into the empire. In 552 CE, Justinian's agents smuggled silkworm eggs in hollow staffs, breaking Persia's monopoly. This espionage let Constantinople build silk workshops, becoming the Mediterranean's luxury goods leader. In 541 CE, a plague arrived at Pelusium and spread along every trade route. The plague of Justinian reached the capital within months, killing 5,000 daily. Justinian survived the plague, which drained a quarter of the population over decades. Theodora died in 548 CE, leaving Justinian's final years isolated and theologically obsessive. Justinian died in 565 CE, leaving a splendid city and an exhausted empire. Struggling emperors followed, fighting to hold territory the treasury could no longer afford. The Lombards overran Italy, while Sassanid Persians pressed the eastern frontier in the 570s. Heraclius seized power in 610 CE and fought Persia's capture of Jerusalem and Egypt. Heraclius defeated Persia in 628 CE, but both empires fell to Arab armies soon after. Umayyad Arab forces besieged Constantinople in 674 CE, blockading it for 4 years. Byzantine defenders deployed Greek fire, a pressurized compound that ignited on contact with water. Greek fire saved the city and became one of its best-guarded secrets for centuries. 5 centuries of further sieges and slow recovery passed before Western Europe's gaze turned east. The Fourth Crusade began not as a plot, but as a debt spiraling out of control. Pope Innocent III's 1198 CE call drew tens of thousands of fervent French and Flemish knights. Crusade leaders signed an 1201 CE contract, promising Venice 85,000 silver marks. Nearly 90 and almost blind, Doge Dandolo dominated negotiations with unsettling precision. Venice's commitment to build vessels for 33,000 men halted other commerce for a year. Fewer than 12,000 crusaders assembled at Venice in 1202, a third of expected numbers. The shortfall left the army stranded on the Lido, unable to pay its debts. Dandolo's solution: capture Zara, a Hungarian-controlled Christian port, as partial debt payment. Despite papal threats of excommunication, leaders accepted Dandolo's terms, having no alternative. Zara fell in November 1202, and the Pope excommunicated the entire army, as promised. The excommunication was soon lifted, but attacking fellow Christians had already broken the Crusades' morals. Into this army arrived Prince Alexios Angelos, who had escaped his uncle's prison. Alexios offered 200,000 marks and Rome's submission for restoring his father's throne. Dandolo knew the offer was unrealistic, yet irresistible to a bankrupt crusade. The fleet sailed from Zara in spring 1203, bypassing the Holy Land for Constantinople. The fleet's late June 1203 appearance reportedly stunned Constantinople's population into silence. Emperor Alexius III's corrupt neglect had left the Byzantine fleet barely seaworthy. Venetian galleys broke the harbour chain as Dandolo stood at his galley's prow. Alexius III fled that night, and the imprisoned Isaac II was restored to power. Young Alexios entered as co-emperor, with crowds hoping his alliance would stabilize things. Unable to pay, Alexios IV melted church icons and sacred vessels for funds. Destroying sacred objects to pay soldiers turned the city violently against Alexios IV. In January 1204, Alexios Doukas strangled Alexios IV and repudiated all Crusader debts. Facing an unpaid debt and a defiant new emperor, war became the only option. On April 9, 1204, Byzantine defenders repulsed the fleet's first assault on the Golden Horn. On April 12th, ship-mounted siege towers let Crusaders reach the wall tops from the sea. 2 Flemish knights crossed the wall walk first. Opening a breach, others followed through. Crusader set fire near the Golden Horn, tore through timber neighbourhoods for 2 full days. Alexios Doukas fled by night, leaving Constantinople without command at its greatest need. Entering on April 13, 1204, Crusaders looted the city for 3 days unchecked. Soldiers methodically stripped churches and homes, prying gold leaf off with daggers. The looted Hagia Sophia saw a soldier sit on the patriarch's throne singing crude songs. 9 centuries of relics, from the true cross to the crown of thorns, went west. The hippodrome's 4 bronze horses were unbolted and shipped to the Venetian lagoon. Dandolo, who would die and be buried there, secured Venice's most profitable operation ever. Chroniclers called it unprecedented harm, unmatched since Constantine had founded the city. Chroniclers estimated the 3 days' looted goods at 400,000 silver marks. Leaders divided the territories and crowned Baldwin of Flanders as the Latin emperor. Baldwin wore the purple boots and crown of a civilization he had just destroyed. The hollow Latin Empire held little land as Byzantine's successor states formed in exile. Theodore Lascaris founded Nicaea in Anatolia, preserving the imperial court and Orthodox clergy. Epirus and Trebizond also refused Latin rule, keeping Byzantine governance alive in fragments. Under Latin rule, the population collapsed from 400,000 to 50,000. Desperate Latin emperors melted bronze monuments and stripped rooftop lead for sale. Venetians kept their quarter and sea lanes, growing rich as emperors grew desperate. Orthodox clergy refused Rome's patriarch, keeping Byzantine identity alive through a parallel structure. Nicaea steadily absorbed territory for decades, claiming true heirship of Constantinople's Roman legacy. Michael VIII's 1261 alliance with Genoa secured naval support Venice couldn't easily counter. In July 1261, Strategopoulos found Constantinople's garrison unguarded while troops raided elsewhere. Strategopoulos led his men through a postern gate in the dead of night. By dawn, the Latin Empire had collapsed without a fight, after 57 years of foreign rule. On August 15, 1261, Michael VIII walked barefoot through the Golden Gate, imitating ancient triumphs. 9 centuries on, the reclaimed city barely resembled Constantine's consecrated capital, now overgrown. Michael VIII repaired the Hagia Sophia, whose roof and mosaics Latin occupiers had damaged. The Paleologos dynasty ruled 2 more centuries, never matching earlier resources or reach. The reclaimed empire was a fraction of itself, contested by Turks, Bulgarians, and Serbs. Michael VIII negotiated the 1274 Union of Lyons, submitting the Orthodox Church to Rome. The Union of Lyons provoked fury, seen as a betrayal of all the cities survived. Michael VIII died in 1282, leaving a state diplomatically isolated and financially exhausted. His son Andronikos II repudiated the union, restoring independence but inviting Western hostility. Andronikos II also dismissed the costly Latin cavalry, his most effective mobile force. This left the empire exposed as Osman I's Ottomans expanded fast across Anatolia. Byzantine cities fell one by one until Bursa became the Ottoman capital in 1326. Losing Bursa signaled a new, organized power had settled across the Marmara Sea. Andronikos II's civil war against his own grandson consumed military resources for a decade. In 1328, the younger Andronikos III seized power, forcing his grandfather into a monastery. A second civil war in 1341 pitted Regent Cantacuzene against Empress Anne of Savoy. Cantacuzene fatefully invited Ottoman forces in, letting them campaign freely across Thrace. Ottoman allies who crossed into Thrace studied and never forgot its fertile land. By 1354, the Ottomans seized Gallipoli, gaining a foothold and cutting Constantinople off. John V travelled to Rome in 1369, converting privately to secure Western military aid. John V's sought-after Western aid never came, despite his religious self-humiliation. By the 1370s, Murad I's encirclement left Constantinople functioning as an isolated enclave. Providing troops for Ottoman campaigns made Constantinople effectively an Ottoman vassal state. In 1402, Mongol ruler Timur shattered the Ottoman army and captured Sultan Bayezid. The Ottoman Civil War bought Constantinople 50 years before swift rebuilding under Mehmed I. In 1422, Murad II besieged Constantinople using gunpowder weapons for the first time. The walls held in 1422, but defenders now knew stone alone wouldn't guarantee survival. When Murad II died in 1451, 19-year-old Mehmed II vowed to take Constantinople. Mehmed's engineer Urban cast the cannon so huge it needed 60 oxen to drag. Mehmed's 1452 fortress, Rumeli Hisari, strangled all sea traffic into the city. Constantine XI's 7,000 defenders held 14 miles against 80,000 Ottomans. Urban's cannon fired 500-kilogram balls, shaking the ground for miles around. Mehmed solved the chain problem by dragging his fleet overland into the harbour. Constantine XI's appeals brought only a small Genoese contingent under Giovanni Justiniani. Before dawn on May 29, 1453, wave after wave of Ottomans struck the weakened walls. Justiniani, struck by a crossbow bolt, was carried off just as the walls broke. Constantine XI, seeing the city lost, tore off his regalia and died fighting as a common soldier. His body, never conclusively identified, earned Mehmed's reward for certain proof. Mehmed II rode through the Adrianople Gate that morning into eerily silent streets. At the Hagia Sophia, Mehmed poured earth over his turban in a gesture of humility. Refugees sheltering under the Hagia Sophia's dome remained when Ottoman soldiers broke in. Mehmed stopped the killing, took captives, and ordered the Hagia Sophia converted at once. That afternoon, a muezzin called the first Islamic prayer from the dome's highest gallery. Mehmed found the deserted palace stripped and crumbling, scattered with feathers and broken tile. In the empty throne room, he recited Persian verse about a spider's curtain there. Mehmed declared himself Kaiser-i-Rum, Caesar of Rome, succeeding the tradition he ended. He banned further looting after one day, knowing a ruined city was worthless. Mehmed invited Greek, Armenian and Jewish communities back with tax breaks and property rights. He resettled thousands of families by decree, rebuilding the population from the ground up. The 40,000 inhabitants Mehmed inherited grew to 200,000 within 30 years. Mehmed's Topkapi Palace on the first hill overlooked all three surrounding waterways at once. The palace's site wasn't accidental. Greek colonists had fortified that same promontory centuries before. Mehmed's new Grand Bazaar became the commercial heart of the Ottoman capital. The ancient hippodrome, once roaring with riots, became central to Ottoman civic life. The Hagia Sophia's mosaics survived under whitewash as the building became a working mosque. Mehmed personally guaranteed Patriarch Gennadios and the Orthodox Church full Ottoman protection. Gennadios became ecumenical patriarch, his privileges personally signed by Mehmed as calculated statecraft. The city's official Ottoman name became Constantinople, though Greeks kept calling it Constantinopolis. Mehmed's Fatih Mosque rose on the fourth hill over the emperor's old burial church. Each new minaret rewrote the skyline, asserting Ottoman permanence over Byzantine ruins. The Bosphorus, strategic for 21 centuries, now served an empire spanning 3 continents. Fleeing Greek scholars carried manuscripts into Italy, directly accelerating the European Renaissance. Constantinople's fall closed the Silk Road, spurring the maritime search behind the age of exploration. Mehmed's rebuilt capital stayed Ottoman for centuries, stretching once from Algeria to the Persian Gulf. Every conqueror at the Bosphorus, Greek, Roman, Crusader, Ottoman, grasped the same truth. This triangular peninsula was no mere convenience. It was the fulcrum balancing 2 ancient worlds. From a Greek fishing camp to Constantine's throne, the city absorbed every catastrophe and rebuilt. The 1,000-year-old Theodosian walls finally fell to one technology: the bronze cannon. The city's story was never just one civilization's. It was what happens when geography outlasts empires.